Our development codes to align with the comprehensive plan updates. We're going to be talking about comprehensive plan later tonight, so Courtney can cover that. Begin work on the Miller Park project. Everyone's excited about that. Belleville's underway now and Miller Park will get started next year. Update the city personnel policies and procedures. We have started with a few of those already that have been brought to council and we'll continue to do that work. Adopt a climate change chapter of the comp plan and complete the city hall addition and modernization project. So it's going along quite quickly over there, it seems, and looking really good and getting all shelled in. So that's awesome.
Well, I just got a quick question.
Yes.
To clarify
Uh-huh.
the record that the climate change chapter of the comp plan is mandated by the state of Washington.
That's correct. Right now it is unfunded, but we do expect that we'll receive some type of commerce support similar to what they provided for the rest of the comp plan chapter, but we don't know how much. And so we did not budget for any revenue to come in to support us on that yet. And we'll update hopefully if there is some funds available.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll go through an overview of the general fund. We'll talk about sources of revenue. So our main sources in the revenue in the general fund are taxes, permits and licenses, intergovernmental payments, charges for goods and services, fines and penalties, and miscellaneous. And we'll talk about each of those in turn. The next slide is an overview. So we are adopting our first biennial budget. As we prepare it, we do prepare 2 annual budgets. So we look at it in terms of what's going to happen in 25, what's going to happen in 26. But when we adopt it, it will be as a total of the biennial budget. But information is always good, more detail, I think, than less. So we do show it as the 25 and the 26 separated out. So I provided some context for reference, 24 revised budget, what we're projecting for our 24 year-end estimates and how that lines up then with 25 preliminary and 26 preliminary. So you'll see we're 24 year-end estimate. We're looking to come in just about 130,000 under right now. We will look at these estimates again a little bit later in this month before we hit final adoption and adjust them if we need to. But we're coming in just a little bit short for this year. And mostly in the sales tax area and a little bit in the utility tax area. For 25 and 26, we do see increases. So we see an increase of about 9% from 24 to 25, and then about 2.5% between 25 and 26. So taxes imposed by the city of Buckley, property tax, sales tax, both the regular and the parks. In the general fund, we also do impose the transportation tax that the council did recently, but that doesn't go into the general fund, that goes into the transportation benefit district fund. So it isn't listed in this particular list. Our utility taxes, both internal and external, and our gambling tax. So you can see the total of the taxes budgeted for 24 was just over 4.2 million. We're projecting a little over 4.3 million in 25, and then about 4.45 million in 26. So as usual, our sales tax is the largest piece of the pie for the 3 utility, or the 3 main tax areas: sales tax, property tax, and utility taxes, with property tax second and then utility taxes third. So sales tax, the current rate is 8.2%. Of that, 8.2.1 was the rate that we council just approved last year that went into effect April of this year. And so we're already starting to see that revenue come in, and we'll do that when we get to the transportation benefit district fund overview. Obviously items that aren't taxed, it's food and prescription drugs and home sales. So in the general fund, so for 25, we're budgeting 1.56 million in the regular, with another almost 74,000 in the parks, and then upping that to about 1.62 million in 26. That represents about a 9% increase in 25 over the 24 year-end estimate, which is still down from what we actually had budgeted in 24. I think we had budgeted 1.57 in 24, and we're not going to receive that this year. So we went off what we are expecting to receive in 24 and then increased from that point, about 9%. That's to recognize that we do know some construction and development is going to be picking up. We do have McDonald's coming on. O'Reilly is in the works that would probably be on before the end of the biennium. So we do have some new sales tax generating businesses as well as construction sales tax coming in. Any questions on that?
Just a quick question, when is McDonald's open?
We thought yesterday.
That's what we thought. Yeah, they
And
came in
so-
and paid last week.
Yeah, and they've received their certificate of occupancy last week, and so we're in the same boat as all of you. We don't know.
Everybody's asking.
I know, we thought yesterday, so I'm surprised every day that it's.
Yeah, right.
I can give a little information, just in the city's defense, the holdup has nothing to do with the city. When we were doing our fire inspection over a week ago, they said that they failed to contact the health department enough times, so they were on a day-by-day basis of contacting them to
Oh,
find a time for an inspection.
okay.
So the question was asked on the official record when Wally was gonna open. That answer was given by the city administrator, what the guess was. And the fire chief said that they've done their fire inspection and McDonald's did not make a timely notice to the health department, so they're awaiting their final checkoff from the health department. For those that are listening, that's what was said here.
Sounds like it. Okay. Property tax. Everyone's favorite topic. So just a review, and I know it probably sounds repetitive, but I like to repeat it just for anybody new that might be listening, since property tax is a complicated type 1 in Washington. As a citizen that lives in the city, they have multiple taxing jurisdictions that request levy amounts from this county. Those levies are then divided by the assessed valuation that the county assessor determines, and a property tax rate results from that. That rate is then applied to every $1,000 of assessed valuation as determined by the county. So we do not set a rate in Buckley. We set how much we need from the levy. And then the rate is determined by the assessed valuation and the math that results. So for 25, why does it keep going like smaller and bigger? What am I doing, Jess?
Oh, maybe that was me, because I just wanted to make sure, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I was just like, it just got smaller. Understand this. Now it won't go.
Hold on, here we go. No,
There we go.
There.
Okay, so for property tax calculation, we take the last year's prior highest lawful levy. And every year we get administrative refunds, but they reduce those out when from our starting point. So this number would be a little less than what we had received for 24 because they'll back out those refunds. But we start from that point. We're allowed a 1% statutory limit optional increase that we have projected that into the budget. Council has the choice to do that or not, but it is in there right now. It generates an additional $13,000 of revenue towards the levy. New construction assessed valuation is determined by the assessor. We have about 18.8 million for 25 that will become onto the rolls. That number is then up divided by 1,000 and multiplied by the current year's rate to see what additional revenue for the levy comes from new construction, and that's just over 22,000. Our administrative refunds for this year are about $3,100. Right now, we have no estimate for state assessed value. That doesn't usually come until later, and so it's usually pretty small if we do even have any. It's on state any state type property. And so the levy amount based on that calculation then is 1,360,295. So that's the amount that the council then adopts and approves, should they choose to continue to do the 1% as it's calculated. That amount divided by our new assessed valuation for 2025, which is 1.18 billion, comes out to a rate then of $1.15 roughly for 25. So yes.
I have a question. What's our current rate?
Our current rate, Councilmember Green, is $1.19. So it is going down because the assessed valuation is going up.
Okay, so even if we did the 1%, the rate everyone pays is actually less than today.
Correct. That is correct.
And that's because it's spread out over population,
Yes,
the valuation, all that.
right. And so one property owner could see a decrease, one property owner could see an increase, and it depends on how their property increased in relation to the overall increase. So
So a property that has a new home on it, for example, the assessed value of that specific property would increase because now you have the improved value and the property value. And so they would take a larger chunk of
Chunk.
the levy pie.
Right. So the levy pie, that's a good way to put it, is yes, only increasing by the 1% for 13,000 and the new construction that the county adds on anyways, of 22,000 plus the 3,000 for refund. So that's all our levy is going up from 24 to 25 and then is spread across a bigger pie. So any questions on that? More? Okay. Utility taxes, it's imposed as a percent on the total bill. So external is electricity, natural gas, telephone, cable, and solid waste. Those are all at 6% except for solid waste, which is at 10%. Water, sewer, and stormwater, which are our city internal utilities, those are also all at 10%. And so in 25, we're looking at about 807,000 from the external and 488,000 from the city for just under 1.3 million. And in 26, that increases to about 833 to the external and a little over 500,000 from the city. So we're just over 1.3 million. There is a little, overall it's increased, not as much as we were hoping. We did take a hit on natural gas utility tax. Gets paid quarterly from Puget Sound Energy. And I noticed when I was doing estimates over the summer that it was significantly down, about 15% down from what we've had in previous years. And so I've been working with our municipal liaison from Puget Sound Energy for the last couple of months to determine why. And I reached out to a lot of the surrounding jurisdictions and finance directors and said, hey, anybody else? Everybody's seen about a 15 to 20% decrease. So the latest reason that I received from PSC is something that don't understand yet, but I'll find out more. It has to do with some kind of the clean air energy credits, deferred account adjustments, and changes to the rate schedules and those kind of things. So we're hoping at first it was maybe somebody made a math error and we were going to be owed back what we were missing, but it seems to be sticking, especially since the other surrounding cities are also experiencing the same decrease. So we planned from the decrease and then hopefully to grow from there, but it is about about $40,000 a year decrease. So that was unfortunate. So as I get more information from PSC, I'll let you know, but it seems to be a thing.
Is that related to the CCA, Clean Climate Act?
I think
Okay,
some of it's
which
related
is
to
on
that.
the
Mhm.
ballot initiative right now.
We don't understand it
Yeah.
fully.
Yeah.
We just
Yeah.
recently.
They
heard
sent me a
from
bunch of
PSC.
spreadsheets that I'm like,
Okay.
I don't even understand what they mean. So I have to get some more information.
It's definitely not because they're using less gas.
Yes, I was like, they are trying to not put gas in at new builds as much, but I don't think that many people are converting off of natural gas somehow that our actual consumption would have gone down 15%. They could say, yeah, you could see maybe a couple percent in a savings of people not, using it as much, but nowhere near 15%.
No, and you'd
Hey.
expect a similar increase in electricity at that point.
Right.
And we're not.
And we're not
that.
seeing that, so. Correct. So that was interesting. Licenses and permits. So of the regulatory nature, we have our building permits, animal licenses, and then other, which includes our special events and our CPL, so concealed pistol licenses. Our building permits for 25, about 744,000, and 2026, almost 850,000. So this is a significant increase from our 24 budget amount. What we estimated these numbers at was about 110 building permits in 25 and about 120 building permits in 26. And so average amount for a building permit is about $6,100 in 25, and it'll be about just under 6,500 in 26. So those are the conservative numbers. And when we looked at what's in development, we feel like it could come in a little higher, but we didn't want to count on all of it. So hopefully the good news would be that it would increase even more than that, but this seemed a safe and conservative number that we could plan on for sure, and move forward.
Is the 6,500, that doesn't include the school districts.
No, that's just the building permit. Yeah, on
And
an
that-
average.
That's assuming a 5% increase from the fees that were set last year based off of that cost recovery analysis.
Mhm.
So as part of the fee schedule, we'll bring revised fees, which adjust based off of the construction cost that are put out by ICC, as well as we always look at our neighboring jurisdictions to see what they're doing for permit fees as well. But those figures represent that, and represent about half of the planned building units that we see currently in development right now. So what we're seeing in civil permit review or in our pre-application reviews, it represents about half of the sum total that we expect to potentially come in. But last year, we saw a couple of significant subdivisions pull out, and those haven't picked traction up again. So we're, again, trying to be conservative, but it could be higher. This is one-time revenue. And so we'd like to budget for less and have a healthier fund balance that we can drag out over the next couple of years as we have trickling inspections and additional development, because eventually we'll be built out and can't count on this revenue forever.
Right. We don't want to budget on the expenditure side to this kind of level ongoing, as we won't have it forever. Business licenses, all businesses conducting business in the city have to have a license, whether they're located here or not. It's managed through the state business license program through Department of Revenue. And right now we're at $85 for both new and renewals. That included the $10 the council increased as part of the 24 budget. And so we're seeing about 72,000 in 25, and we'll see about 74,000 in 26 for budget. So they've been coming in strong. Intergovernmental revenue. So this is pretty much just grants from either county, state, or federal grants. In 25, we have 75,000 from the FEMA Safer Grant for the fire recruitment and retention coordinator position. Department of Health, we have 2 grants, both for the youth center, 48,500 for the youth violence prevention grant that we've had for many years now, and then 6,000 under the marijuana prevention grant. That one's a little in flux and tends to kind of get small pieces here and there as we go along during the year. So that one could probably increase, but that's what we're guaranteed and sitting at right now. Traffic Safety Commission, the police do some DUI patrol emphasis, seatbelt emphasis, and we get around $3,500 a year for reimbursement on that. Department of Commerce, we do have one Department of Commerce grant, the paper to digital grant. So that's going to help fund the permit system as well as the Laserfiche. And it's an $80,000 grant. We were kind of budgeting half of it this year in 24 to get, and then half of it into 25. So let's see how that works out. Department of Housing and Urban Development, our CDBG grant for the senior center is 36,000 for next year. And then for Pierce County, we have an additional 47,000 for senior center programs. In 26, it's pretty much the same repeat of the same list, 75 for FEMA, marijuana and youth violence prevention, similar, just down a little bit, 45,005. Same for Traffic Safety Commission for DUI patrol. Our HUD grants down to 35 instead of 36, and we have our same 47,000 for the senior center. So the only one that fell off was the commerce grant, because that would be ending in 25. Any question on grants? State shared revenue. So this is the revenue we receive from the state on a per capita basis. So as our population goes up, we get a little bit more of the pie, a little bit bigger share. The marijuana excise tax, right around 80,000 plus or minus each year. Our liquor tax is just under 40,000 for each year, and liquor board profits a little over 40,000. So ever since the state then took over the taxes on the liquor board and the liquor tax, they stay fairly consistent because they're kind of set in the RCWs of how much the cities can receive. So it's just a matter of hopefully getting more as our population grows. Fees and charges for service. This includes the planning side of development. So our plan review fees, because we have so much kind of in the pipeline for building, we're not seeing quite as much we're expecting in the planning side. So we did reduce the estimate from the 24 budget for 25 and 26. Maybe somebody will surprise us and come in. So that would be good. Reimbursable engineering. This is the line for the reimbursements. So since we do not have our own engineering staff doing review of plans, and we contract with Grain Osborne and other wetland specialists and those things, we bill out to the developers all the costs that we're charged. So it's a pass through to some degree. Whatever we pay, we then bill out and then the revenue comes back into here. So we have been doing, my staff has been doing an amazing job of catching up on the past years that hadn't been billed. And getting stuff, I think just the other week, we got one from 2017 that paid, so that was good. Yeah, so, because we're kind of catching up, we don't have quite as much, but it'll be more steady with what's happening and going on and getting billed for the current year. So 24 was at 300,000 budgeted. I think we're actually gonna get probably about 350 to 360,000. So we'll get a little over budget this year, but we did drop it to 250 next year. So if we start to see that increase a lot more just because of what's going on in development, then we can always adjust that during the year. Also our law enforcement and fire protection service contracts have a portion in the general fund. Passport services, so we are budgeting less than what we did in 24. And we've kind of shown the council that analysis. So even though it feels like we are getting less revenue than what we planned from a budgeting standpoint, we are actually seeing more volume come in. So when I had originally estimated what we would be able to do by hiring that position, that kind of volume fell off because it slowed down everywhere. I mean, we had been booking out 2 months at a time and that slowed down. So it's picking back up. We're fully covering the cost of the position and then bringing in additional revenue. We've added not only the photo services, and now we have a small fee if someone wants to help with the renewal. We can come in and we'll look through the renewals, which have to be mailed. We can't process their renewals, but we can look at them, make sure they have everything in order, and then mail it for them for a $15 charge. And so a lot of people like that because it is very particular how you have to fill out the form and staple the photo on and all of that. So it does seem to be something that people have called about in the past, and we were able to have that on. So the administrative overhead fee, that is the 12.7% that for 24, and then in 25 it's about 12% flat off of the ICAP model, the indirect cost allocation plan model, and we're able to charge that on top of all of the development fee permits and planning and building that come in. And so that's why you'll see that increase, because then we added that on to basically 12% on top of what the building permit revenue is, and be able to recapture that. So that helps pay for the administrative overhead function of the city as well. Fines and penalties. This is all generated by the traffic infractions, DUI fines, misdemeanor fines. It tends to remain fairly flat. We're about 110,000 almost per year. Don't want to count on that as increasing a lot. Other sources that aren't technically revenue, but they do come into the general fund. We have transfers mostly from the other operating funds. And so the other operating funds like water, sewer, storm, the EMS fund, those type of things all have to pay a portion of the insurance that's budgeted in the general fund. They pay their share of the insurance. That's all based on vehicle values, property values, and those things. And then also the indirect cost allocation plan to pay for the indirect services of legal, city administrator, finance, IT, and those transfers then come in from the other funds as well. We are looking to close the railroad right-of-way fund that has historically in the past paid about 30% of the parks maintenance budget, and 70% had been in the general fund. But we also had many more rentals at the time that was able to fund that. We had, and we've sold those properties off. So we only currently have one rental bringing revenue into that fund. And so it's gone up, it still has a fund balance, but it's going upside down. The 30% of the parks maintenance is more than what the rental revenue coming in is. So we feel like there's no reason to continue to keep that fund open. We moved the cost to the general fund, we'll move the revenue to the general fund. And so we will transfer the remaining fund balance that's in there, which is about projected at 77,000 into the general fund, and add it to the general fund's fund balance. And then fund balance is the unspent cash from the previous year, reserves and working capital. And then our projected ending fund balance, supposed to say 26, sorry, not 25, is 622,467. Any questions on revenue? That covers all of our revenue overview. Nope. Okay. We can move into expenditures and general fund personnel. I think we're pretty familiar with the general fund operations. Obviously, it's public safety, police, fire, and court, our jail and animal control service contracts, parks maintenance, the youth and senior centers, building and planning services, facilities maintenance, and then all the internal service, of course, of admin, finance, HR, and IT. Here's a look at our general fund expenditures. So we were about 7.4 million for 2024 and 25. We were looking at about 7.8 million, and in 26, about 8.2. So some of those expenditures, there's one time in 25, we have several one time. We have 300, no, how much do we have?
The finances?
Yeah. 100, thank you.
No, it's 130.
130, that's why the 3 is stuck in my, 130,000 budgeted for the finance software project, so that's a one-time cost. And I just went blank on what the other 2 were. Oh, I'll think of it. But so it's about a 6% increase for 25. And about a 4% increase. So this presumes the personnel items that we'll get to in a minute, but this includes any of the personnel changes, cost of living, and those things. Okay. Just a pie chart to show where the expenditures are distributed in the general fund. The largest public safety includes both police and fire, so 42%. With the next largest covering finance and admin, so that covers finance department, city administration, the small budget for the personnel and for the wellness, internal city programs, those are all included in that. And then you can see building and planning is about 9%, IT just under 8%. IT, we've been trying to centralize all of the software subscriptions into and software costs into the IT budget. So that's definitely had a impact and increase that budget, but we're doing allocating them and budgeting for all of those in IT. And then anything that's for the other operating departments gets split out through that indirect cost allocation model.
I remembered what they were. So we have the finance software that was 130, the cost for the climate change chapter, assuming that Commerce doesn't give us any type of grant. So paying for that as a one-time cost, and then also the increased cost for building inspection services. Those were the
Thank you.
presumed increases.
So general fund personnel, right now, the local 302 union, Public Works and Admin, we're still in negotiations, so no items to report right there on that. The police union personnel salaries have a closed contract, so 3.5% COLA. Upper unrepresented in the budget is included at a 4% COLA. The hourly personnel follow the unrepresented or non-represented, so 4%. And then all levels of service are continuing in the departments. And personnel changes include in fire, adding an additional firefighter EMT in 2025, which would be 60% general fund and 40% EMS. And then increasing the part-time admin assistant to a full-time 1.0 FTE. Again, that's split between general fund and EMS, I believe also at 60-40. In police in 2026, adding an additional police officer. And then we had some exempt non-represented staff changes. Chris Banks, who's been the Public Works Director and acting kind of as the interim planning and building director, so covering both departments. Just formally recognizing the change of those duties, changing the title to a Public Services Director, so it encompasses all of the areas of responsibility. And then changing ranges from R9 to R11. And so he was at R9 previously with an additional 10% increase for the additional department. And so the R11 just kind of keeps him on that same R9 plus 10%, but puts him without having to keep adding the extra 10% manually. So that's where that falls. The information technology manager range increased from R7 to R10. This position was significantly out of market. And so we're recommending an increase for that to bring it within market. We have one IT person who covers all bases from help desk software, security, all of those things. The management analyst range increased from R2 to R6. So when this position was initially advertised for, it was placed at R2, not knowing exactly what kind of candidate we would get, exactly what the duties would be for the position. We were able to secure a candidate that we have that is well qualified and has come from previous cities where they've worked in public works and have lots of experience. And so the duties have changed given those areas of responsibility. And so recognizing that and bringing it up. Do you want to add anything to that? Okay. And then our court clerk has always been on the hourly rep scale. And so Bruce bringing that one, since it's more, it's a non-represented position and it's a permanent position, it's a 90% FTE. So just bringing it onto the non-represented salary scale at an R1. And it aligns with basically what they were making now as an hourly rate, but just gives them a more salaried rate like the rest of the non-represented stuff. Any changes about the personnel changes? Okay. Other funds. So our other funds for special revenue and capital, we have 3 for street operating in the arterial street, which is the capital and the transportation benefit district. We have the EMS fund. We have 1 police fund, the criminal justice, where the criminal justice sales tax goes. So it has to be a special revenue fund. We have a fund for maintaining the fire facility, fire station, our visitor promotion, which is the lodging tax, and the 2 capital and general capital improvement funds. So this doesn't count for the utility capital. This is just general capital. In the street operating fund, so obviously the purpose is maintain and the maintenance and the general repair of the streets and the street lighting, including parking lots and street striping. Motor vehicle fuel tax, the gas taxes is our main source of revenue. This is also distributed on a per capita basis by the state. It stays flat, it goes up a tiny bit, it goes down. And so I believe 25 is pretty flat to 24, and then we are going to see a small increase in 26. So gas tax is not sold on price. So as the gas price keeps going up, or when it goes really high, we don't necessarily get more revenue because it's sold on a per gallon. So the higher the gas price, less people driving or more people buying EVs with less gas being sold. That's why it stays flat and tends to even decrease at times, is because it's sold on a per gallon basis. Additional funding for street operations comes from the transportation benefit district. Both we have the $20 license fee and that 0.1% sales tax rate. So this year, as a partial year, we're going to get probably about 195,000 coming in from the transportation benefit district. And then when we have a full year of the sales tax next year, and in 26, we're expecting closer to 265,000 coming in from the TBD to help support street operations, which would be good. Street operations up until the council approving that was running very low on fund balance and, going to be needing a general fund subsidy, which would then impact the general fund. So this was to be able to not have the general fund subsidize the street fund. And it's a direct source of transportation funding that can only be used for that. Arterial street fund for capital. Street impact fees are our main source, about 400,000 in 25 and 450 in 26. This is an increase from 24. Again, due to development coming in, we'll be seeing street impact fees. And we also receive TIB grants based on whatever the projects are. We apply for TIB grants. So those are our main sources of funding for that. And then the TBD, just that it has a little history on there. The $20 license fee hasn't been growing a lot. We have seen a little bit of increase this year. Last year was pretty flat, but this year we're seeing a little bit of an increase. I think people are paying for their tabs a little bit more this year now. So 168,000 in 25 and 174,000 in 26. And then the transfers out then for street operating. The EMS fund. So EMS, the main source is obviously the EMS levy. And so kind of like regular property tax, the calculation would be the prior year with the 1% new construction added, refunds, state value. And so dividing the total levy of the 343,000 by 508 by the assessed value, we would be at a rate of about 29 cents. So with the EMS levy lid lift, that allowed us to levy the full 50 cents per assessed valuation starting for 25 taxes. And that gets us an additional $246,000 in revenue. So our levy will be 590,000 in 2025 instead of the 343. That allowed us to shift the personnel for fire from a 60-40 split for the most part for the existing staff to a 25-75. The new position is still at a 60-40 just because the EMS fund can't handle an additional full 75 for the new position. So we left that one at the 60-40. But then that helped the general fund and put the costs more where the actual services are, which is EMS calls. The council, we have to do a property tax on an annual basis. So even though we're doing a biennial budget, we have to do property tax every year and provide the levy to the county. So in the mid-biennial update next fall, we'll redo property tax again. And then that's when the council will have the choice to increase the EMS levy up to 6% with the max of being the 50 cents per thousand rate. So with the EMS levy lid lift, this will be the opportunity that the council does have an impact on the rate. And you can raise the percentage increase in order to keep the rate at 50 cents full funding, if that's what your choice is.
And that's
So-
because that's what was approved on the ballot measure. that we
Yes.
support voters.
Correct. That was part of the ballot measure listed that way. The criminal justice fund, there is a 0.1% sales tax that's collected in that, and then it's collected by the state and distributed by the county to us based on a formula that includes incorporated population, unincorporated population, and the crime rates. So it varies, but not significantly from year to year. We're expecting 135,000 next year and 139,000 in 25 based on the rates that they've put out on a per capita basis. We also do get some state shared revenue for other special population programs. And that's about 10,000 in 25 and 11,000 in 26. So we are proposing to transfer this fund, as we kind of started doing it in 23, 24, is really just transferring funds to the general fund to support the police operations instead of splitting operations between two funds. It's easier just to transfer the funding here and put it all in the general fund, and then all the costs for the law enforcement and police are all in one spot in the general fund. So in 25, it's 308,000 for both staffing and capital equipment, replacing a new car. So on their car replacement schedule, we didn't do any car replacements for 24, so we're doing one in 25, and then another one in 26, so about 328,000, and that's when the new position then would come on as well. Visitor Promotion Fund, this is our lodging tax, which is collected by the state and distributed to the cities. We're expecting about 68,000 in 25 and 70,000 in 26. Small growth from 24. We'll cover this a little bit more in detail when I'm done with the main presentation. The Lodging Tax Advisory Committee that we are required to have now that we're over 5,000 population has met and made the recommendations. And so I have some information to present to you on that when I'm done with this presentation. The capital funds, our 307 and our 308, this is where our REIT funding comes in. REIT 1, as it's called, goes into 307, and REIT 2 goes into 308. So they're equal in revenue. 210,000 is what we're budgeting for both years, 2025 and 2026. And that's about a 5% increase over what we saw in 24. Trying to be conservative on that. It's hard to tell sometimes what the housing market can do. We've been seeing pretty steady month to month amounts that would be able to get us to the 210. So in 25 and 26, projects in 307 are the completion of the City Hall Champ project. And then funding for Miller Park, phase 1 in 25, the 507,200. So that includes our portion of the city match. That amount then includes our city match, and then we're slated to receive a grant. And that would cover the multi-use sports courts and the bathroom. And then phase 2 in 2026, 500,000 city funding for playground and picnic shelter. In 308 projects, with completion of the Beverly Street extension, which is related to Miller Park, and then transferring funding from 308 into 307 for the City Hall project completion and for Miller Park, part of that 500,000. So some of the funding from REIT 2 is funding the projects over in the 307 fund. Any questions? Nope. Stop me if I'm going too fast. So our utility funds, we do have the natural gas operating and the solid waste operating fund, 401 and 403 still open. Because we do receive some revenue on those, anything like on a house that may be sitting out there in foreclosure or something else that has an outstanding amount on it when those houses are sold, then those are required to be caught up to date. So we do get random amounts trickling in on those, both of those funds. Obviously our water sewer operating, and then water sewer construction funds, water operating, stormwater construction, and our equipment reserve fund, which we're still working to change into an internal service fund. And we'll probably do that during the biennium, but we budgeted it the same as of this year, as we wanted to develop the equipment life cycle and equipment depreciation schedules and those first, so we knew what exactly the funding that we have available is by vehicle, and we'd be able to lay that out in a new internal service fund. So as those get completed, we'll work on switching over the equipment reserve fund to an internal service fund. Water is expected, we're planning in a 5% rate increase to 25 and 26, plus we plan in some growth. So 1.6 million in 25 and 1.7 million in 26. Sewer right now has no rate increase included, just a little bit of growth. The sewer rate study is still underway. And then stormwater, no rate increase. Also, we need a stormwater rate study. So hopefully that will get completed during the biennium, and that will inform any new revenue. But right now, we're just basing it on just a small percent of growth, especially for stormwater. It's not consumption based, so it's really only as additional new properties or development gets completed. So next, any questions before we cover next steps on anything we've covered? No? Okay. Next steps, next week is our second public hearing. This is on the preliminary budget itself, and it's the second of 3 public hearings that we're required to have. And council can have discussion next week during the meeting as well on the budget, or ask any questions that we would like follow up on. The November 19th is tentative on the calendar as a special council study session if needed, if council needs more time for just deliberations that you don't want to necessarily take up the regular meeting for. And then on November 26th, if council so chooses, we will have the 25-26 budget adoption ordinance on that meeting. But we will have to be required to have the property tax and EMS levy ordinances. We are required to file our levies with the county by November 30th. And so that being our last council meeting, we'll have the property tax and EMS levies. We'll hold the final public hearing on the budget. And if council is ready, we'll have an ordinance ready for adoption. If not, we can move to December 10th for adoption on that meeting. That is my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
I see no questions. Thank you for
Okay.
that.
Okay, so can we,
Moving on to your next
Yep.
point.
so the LTAC recommendation. Oh, what?
Yeah, already. Like it's sharing on here, I don't know. why it's not.
And yep, there's up 2 for them.
Nope.
Sitting on the chair.
It's not. Pointing towards your head. Yeah.
Earlier, but I couldn't reach it enough and then.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to automatically like track it.
That-
It's
not see that.
better, but
Looking at this shelf right here too.
Oh.
That's what it was doing. It was all the way to the wall when
Maybe we had-
I. There.
sorry, everyone on Zoom.
Yeah,
Some motion sickness right now.
right. Wait, what's going on?
Gonna be the new.
The world's moving.
Yeah,
Florida Center.
yeah, you can see it.
Looks that way.
Yeah, better.
I
Better.
was looking at the shelf. and
I'm sure it's dusted.
Okay. So 2025 LTAC funding recommendations. The LTAC committee, we earlier this year, we had put out for a 2024 funding cycle to use 2024 budget. Because we didn't have it done previously. And after the committee got formed, so we did that. That has already happened. It's already been put into the budget. And so this is the cycle for funding with 2025 dollars. We'll do it on an annual basis. So we'll do 26 during the mid-biennial process next year. The applications were posted and closed on October 17th. On October 23rd, the committee met to review the applications. We received 8 applications. I'll go over those details in a minute. Then on October 29th, the committee received some presentations from selected applicants and finalized their funding recommendations. As part of the budget that I put out on October 31st, those recommendations are included in the total for the 136 Visitor Promotion Fund. Tonight, council can review those recommendations and have discussion. And then the next steps would be for the council to decide on finalizing the funding recommendations that would be included in the final budget when it comes for adoption. So the applicants that were received, we received 8. So from Buckley Chamber of Commerce, they requested 14,125, and they're asking it to be additional funding toward the permanent speakers on Main Street that they requested with the 24 funding. That project is still in process, just from logistics of how the lights are going to come down to get the speakers up and such. So they found out that they needed additional funding for electrical and those kind of things. So they're asking for additional funds to add to their 24 request. The Foothills Historical Society, one that they work with in conjunction with the city, it funds the annual museum operating expenses. So it covers the insurance and the lights and the phone and all of the things that just keep the museum open and operating. Visit Rainier, they asked for 13,000 to continue the Buckley tourism marketing. We have seen a lot of good things come from them from their 24 funding that they've already accomplished as far as creating a Buckley page on the Visit Rainier site and doing a lot of marketing for the events in Buckley, the hotels, the restaurants and such. Buckley Loggers Rodeo, 15,000. This would be for additional seating and a Bowl of the Woods section and some ADA items for related to the additional seating. The city of Buckley put in 2 applications, even though we collect the money, we're a user of the money, so the city has to apply as well. So Buckley Hall restoration, the flooring in there, 50,000 is just an estimate at this point. We don't know exactly how much that's going to cost. The LTAC funding is all on a reimbursement basis, so we would only spend as much as what it costs up to that amount. And then 10,000 for the restoration of the Veterans Memorial brick wall. Buckley Downtown Association asked for 8210, and that was for event supplies, promotional materials, having a porta potty kind of, I wouldn't say year round, but a good majority of the year when all the events are happening. And then for signage. And then the Enumclaw Expo and Event Association asked for 12,500 to do geofencing and digital advertising. So that the geofencing, as it was explained to us, is kind of like creating a digital fence around an event that if somebody's at the Tacoma Dome, then if they want to look up restaurants or something in the area, it targets kind of like when you say something and all of a sudden you start getting ads on your phone for whatever you just talked about with your neighbor. It kind of does some of that. It does some of that, but it'll start popping up Buckley things. And so that's what they were asking funding for.
How is Enumclaw Expo and Event Association eligible to apply for our LTAC?
The agencies that apply do not have to be located within the city of Buckley. They just have to have whatever they plan on spending the funds on has to promote tourism for the city of Buckley. So with them, they're advertising their events and saying, here's all the Buckley hotels you can go stay at when you come to, Beer Brats and whatever that one's called. And we're the dog show. And here's the restaurants. And so they would tag all of the Buckley, either events or hotels or restaurants or those kind of things in the advertising for their events.
So they would have to do that.
Well, that would be what they said that they would use the
What-
money for.
What they're proposing is right now, the majority of their geofencing is north into King County.
Okay.
So the way that this would work is individuals who see the advertisements are traveling from north and King County and less likely to travel through Buckley specifically. They're more taking the Auburn path and avoiding or not taking the
Just coming
Buckley
down
path.
from
Yep.
north, yeah.
Right. And so they're proposing to start advertising their geofencing in the southwest region, which would be like the Tacoma Dome in theory, or other event centers that would take traffic from southwest through the Buckley corridor.
So they'd have to pass us.
They included in their proposal the possibility of partnering on some weekends with cross promotional. They already do promote our hotels. And so this would be a way to try to target people to come to the Enumclaw Events Center through the city of Buckley, meaning that we should get additional tourism in theory from people who are traveling through the city.
Councilmember Green.
I don't quite get the geofencing yet, but, but is the money that like was it 8,200 or the recommendation on the next page, which you haven't got to yet, someone's bullet for everyone, 4,100. Is that specific to, I guess, like geofencing for Buckley? Or is it for everything, for the whole geofencing program?
In the southwest area that would hopefully, yes, draw people to their events, but having to travel along 410 so that they would come through Buckley, maybe they would stop here to eat, or they would stop to, oh, there's a place we can stay. So like she said, yeah, they don't have any geofencing in the south that are
Yeah.
trying to draw people like at the Tacoma Dome or at Puyallup Fair or something like that. It may be advertising their event, but they're trying to get the people from
Okay.
the south to come through Buckley
I see.
instead of just coming down from the north.
I
They
see.
would never
So-
come to Buckley because they're just going to Enumclaw and stopping and then going back.
So it's basically they're advertising the Enumclaw Expo Center to people who may be at the Washington Fairgrounds.
Right.
Yes.
And then they would, in theory, drive through Buckley.
Yes.
To get there. Okay, so there's no like, hey, come to the Enumclaw Expo Center and stop Main Street Bistro because they have great flatbread or anything like that.
They indicated that that was a possibility, but we didn't see any examples of those types of promotions.
Okay.
They said they, yeah, could make some kind of package type advertising.
So is this geofencing a Google search?
No,
You have your location services on?
so when you go on Facebook, for example, and you are looking at your promotions or the sponsored material, that is oftentimes based off of your geographic location. And so when you're located at the Tacoma Dome, if the Enumclaw Expo Center was to pay for geofencing, and they use a third-party company called Genesis to run this program for them. When you're at the Tacoma Dome, when you go to your sponsored ads, it would include the Enumclaw Expo Center sponsored ad in that area if you were located in that geofencing area. Same thing with your promotional ads on Google. So if you were to search for events in wherever, at the top of your Google search, it would say these are sponsored or promotional return search items. And that's part of the geofencing.
Because they paid to have
They
that,
paid to have it.
have that advertising placed there.
Never thought I'd ever encounter something like this.
And I will say there's nothing that prevents the city of Buckley from also working with one of these types of organizations to promote our events specifically. What Enumclaw Expo Center is saying is they want to open up a new form of or a new area for them to do geofencing. They're already doing it successfully in King County. And so they'd be using the LTAC dollars in order to start looking at that southwest region. But it would be primarily for the Expo Center events.
Is there any way for us to verify that that's what they're using this $4,100 that has been granted for them?
Well, we would have the invoices showing that they were paying Genesis, the company, to do the geofencing, and it would show it's supposed to be geofencing in the, I mean, I didn't physically see it, but we'd have to see the invoice
But
that
we
they're
would
paying
see
for
They
that,
were paying for the company that is.
to do it in the southwest region, yes. Because it's all reimbursed, so they have to provide invoices showing that they paid for it, and that's what it is, yeah.
And LTAC requested that we did require as part of the recommendation that 3, I believe, of the advertisements had to include some type of packaging with the city of Buckley. And so before we would reimburse, we would want evidence that that's the ad that went out.
So based on the applications and the couple of presentations that the committee asked for to get more information, one of them being on the geofencing. The recommendations that came out of LTAC were 100% funding for several, the Buckley Chamber of Commerce for the speakers, Foothills Historical Society, which is museum operations, the Visit Rainier, Buckley Loggers Rodeo, City of Buckley, both of their requests. The Buckley Downtown Association, the committee felt that they wanted to only sponsor that at 50%. And the Enumclaw Expo Center then only at 5,000, 40% for just as a way to see about the geofencing and see how that would work, but not to give them full funding. So those are the recommendations from the committee. The next steps are for the council to consider those recommendations and do one of three things. You can approve each recommendation as the LTAC has presented it. You can approve some, but not all. So you could say, well, we want to approve 1, 2, 3, and 4, but not 5, 6, 7, and 8. You don't have to, or you can recommend an organization to be funded at a different amount, but then it does have to go back to the LTAC. They have to look at it, agree, and make a new recommendation back to the council. So the council cannot recommend funding for any organization that didn't apply and get recommended by the LTAC. So you have to work off of this list of 8. And if you do change an amount, it has to go back to the LTAC, but you can approve them all or approve a portion of them. And so I wanted to present it tonight as part of the budget, so the council has it and has time to think about it. And it'll be discussed over the next couple of meetings. The full 100 and what did I say? The 127,000. Oh, they had it in. Where did I go? 120. Oh, it's on my other slides. Yeah, 127,000 for this list is included in the preliminary budget that you have. And so if you would choose to not fund some, then that amount would get reduced. And that's all I have on that.
Maybe either you or Denise can answer this. The Buckley Downtown Association. They sounded like they were waiting for some of this to continue with something that they started last year. Was that the same last year? Was a 50% recommendation last year? Do you know that?
I think we funded them
Speakers or
in
whatever.
full.
That was the
full-
chamber.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the chamber. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the chamber is, using their money to continue what they did last
Okay.
year with the light
Okay.
or the speakers.
Okay.
Yes,
Perfect.
yes.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments on the LTAC? Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Next item is the comp plan. All kinds of paper, dead trees and.
I know, one-sided dead trees. Sorry about that.
We got to the climate change chapter,
Yeah.
we're okay.
Then you'll get it really small, save paper and 4 slides for.
Front origami paper.
I do want to recognize that Senior Planner Chris Farnsworth is also here to help answer questions if you have any or receive feedback. You have seen this several times as a full package. At the front of your packet are the only slides that were really changed since the last time you reviewed it. This first one is just the future land use map. There were some changes after we went to the Planning Commission and received from feedback from individual property owners requesting to keep their existing flume designation. And so that is reflected here in this map. For page 66, we included 2 new maps, adjusting the future land use map in order to identify what we consider underutilized properties. So these would be properties, for example, on the commercial corridor zone that are maybe single family residential, or the scaffolding yard, or things that could be redeveloped for a higher purpose or a higher, more intense use. So 2 new maps. And then
We need to have this.
it was included, it was published in the packet. I don't think you have it pulled up, the packet from,
Oh, the second.
The maps or whatever.
yeah, the maps was
Oh,
included in
yeah,
the
yeah.
packet. It's in all of these are referenced in the or in the packet materials, starting on page 2 of the packet published online. And then page 66, the economics, oh, no, so we added some information regarding that references these 2 new maps and then created the 2 new maps. And then we have some additional goals and policies that were added to the transportation section provided by the city engineer. which are shown as page 133 and 132 through 135. No other changes to the comp plan from the last time that you all saw it. So we are open to receiving any edits that you may have. Now is still certainly the time to incorporate those into the document.
Yeah, I have one edit, and it's not any of the new stuff, so I probably just glossed over this before, so forgive me. It's under the land use and community design section, LU 3.3. I'm hoping we can soften the language here a little bit. As it reads, it says combat historic racial exclusion, then Buckley's diversity in 2024 is significantly lower than Pierce County at large, with 91% of city residents identifying as white and not Hispanic, by expanding access to affordable housing, particularly for underserved and minority populations, and by preserving existing affordable housing within the city. I agree with the direction here. Hope we can redline the combat historic racial exclusion and just start with expand access to affordable housing, particularly for underserved and minority populations, and by preserving existing affordable housing within the city. I think that probably unintentionally, that could be misinterpreted as like some sort of intentional excluding different racial groups. And I don't think I know that's not the case in Buckley. So I would like to see that red line and just start in the middle of that paragraph and keep the rest of it. So it's still a goal, but it just doesn't seem like it's so ominous, I guess. Yeah,
Absolutely. We can
Okay.
make that change.
if everyone agrees.
Ron agrees, I know.
I-
You do.
And this section of language, this entire section of language has been attempted to be softened
Yeah.
quite a bit. There will be
Page 32.
there will be an additional appendix in the second section of the comprehensive plan that we are required to put together that references diversity, equity, and inclusion. The findings of that report did show that the city of Buckley has no past practice of having exclusionary policies that are found in other cities and counties throughout Washington state. So but we are still required to reference it. And so we will certainly soften that language and
Yeah.
reference that appendix directly.
Thank you.
Any other immediate changes? And if you have red lines that you just want to provide to me and I will scan them into the consultants, we can do that as well. We have to have this adopted by December 31st. I am sure that if we're done with a budget, it would be great to have it done by December 13th, which is that second council meeting. Or 10th. First council meeting, regular council meeting in December. 10th, okay, December 10th,
And this is the every 20-year thing,
every 10 years.
every 10.
But really, we can amend this every year, and I can almost guarantee that we will amend it next year as we're going through the development regulation update. There may be some areas that we decide to further fine tune. You can only amend your comp plan once per year, but we're required to go through this recertification where PSRC and the Department of Commerce give us a whole list of to-dos to update our comp plan once every 10 years as part of the periodic review.
And this is, the comp plan is a subset of the Growth Management Act.
Correct, yeah.
December 10th.
December 10th is our hopeful date. We'll bring this forward though, as soon as it seems like we have general consensus and everyone's comfortable with the language. And our team internally is still going through the process of reviewing everything to make sure it all makes sense with what we know our existing policies and plans to be.
Very well said.
Mhm. It was good.
So it's good.
It was on you. It's on YouTube.
Maybe one of the few views on YouTube.
Or 3.
Give it like and subscribe.
Any other questions or comments regarding the comp plan?
So when are we gonna move on this? I know we have a drop dead date. So the 10th of December.
By December 10th, but we'll probably bring it forward for action the same night as we do the budget for the first time, the 26th of November, that last council meeting. And then if we have any additional changes, move it to the 10th until you're ready to adopt and take action. But we'll have an ordinance prepared by that date.
Okay, the only question, any questions on the comp plan or comments on the comp plan before we move off of there today? My question for the city administrator is, are we still on doing tracking the right way on the city hall remodel. It looks like they're really working.
Yes,
Good.
my understanding is that we are still on schedule for a spring opening. Might be late spring,
Things are gonna slow down now.
early,
I mean,
yes.
not slow down.
Yes.
It looks like it slows down because everything goes inside.
Inside.
Yeah, yes. So I'll certainly update council if it seems that there's any delays, but right now, as far as I know, we are still fully on track.
Outstanding. Any comments from the council? I'm unfortunate we have only three of us here, but is what it is. I appreciate the finance director's preparation of all these documents and of course the city administrator
Thank you.
for all of this stuff that we have, and it's that time of the year. This is my 7th go around for a budget. So,
You don't have to do it next year.
It's seven,
Full.
seven, seven and eight.
Yeah.
You get to do budget light
Seven
next
and eight.
year.
Right,
Budget light next year.
7 and 8.
Budget light.
nothing else. I see nothing else. So it is again, it's still the 5th of November of the year 2024, 7:11 PM on the West Coast Standard Time. This will conclude the Buckley City Council study session.